Hey guys, welcome back to the United Star. Today we have a very special guest. We have Karthik Shayamasundar all the way from Manchester. He is currently the under 18 manager of Poynton Junior Football Club. He's an aspiring football manager. He is also the presenter for All for United. Karthik, thanks so much for coming on to our show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been a while. You guys have been asking me for quite a while, and finally I'm able to do it.
Yeah. So Karthik, just getting straight into it, I think this is the first time I'm actually interacting with a professional football manager. I've never really done it before. So what is the experience like? I mean, when did you decide that this is something that you want to take up as a career, and how has your experience been?
First of all, the professional is a very big word to use there. I'm not a professional yet. I'm not getting paid. I'm still doing it on a voluntary basis. But to be honest, the decision to go into coaching and management was a very late decision for me. It was probably when I was 17, 18, when I was still in school back in India, and I was in year 11, year 12. I was sort of going towards the business side of it. And I thought, you know what, actually, there's like a university degree for football coaching. And I thought, you know what, I want to chase this, because that was that around that time where I started realizing that when I was speaking about football to my friends, obviously in India, there's a big football following. Everyone's very knowledgeable about it, more than some people realize. And when I was talking to them, I realized my knowledge would almost be a level above theirs. So much so that I'd be speaking about something and then I'd go into it in a bit more depth, and people around me would just be like, Karthik, no one cares about that stuff. Just talk about it normally. Do you know what I mean? And so I thought maybe there is something I can use there. Maybe there's that kind of knowledge that I could put into place. And I knew coaching was obviously a larger thing. It's more than just tactics. It's more than just things like that. So I thought I want to go into that. I want to learn. And obviously I had to, convince my parents and all this and that. You know very well what Indian parents are like. And yeah, I eventually found a university course. I got myself a scholarship at the uni, got myself in, and here we are.
It's fantastic. So Karthik, I just want to ask you now, of late we've been seeing the rise of these 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. We've seen Jude Bellingham from Dortmund. He's playing in the Euros for England right now. There's Reyna from the USA. There are several players like this. If you go a little further, there's Phil Foden, who was at the forefront for City's title triumph. There's obviously Mason Greenwood from United. These are very young players, but you don't say that these are good for under 18s or good for under 21s. These are good for irrespective of the age group. So is this because of sort of increase or advancement in coaching techniques over the years, or is it maybe a mentality shift that there's more pressure on them, so they end up performing better? What is the reason?
I think in the modern game, a lot of the coaching has improved, yes, especially abroad. I think the facilities abroad, clubs like Dortmund, they're built on this. That's their game. They build these young players, turn them into world stars, sell them off, and make the profit, or they sign someone young and sell them off later. And of course, the coaching in terms of it is more geared towards helping these young players. And I think the modern game is more moving towards that side of, well, we can trust these youngsters, whereas maybe before it's very rare that you saw those kind of things happen. However, I also think, yes, the mentality has something to do with it. You see people like, for example, Jude Bellingham. He's playing in the Champions League when he's just turned 17. He's putting in performances in a quarterfinal against Manchester City, managed by Pep Guardiola. That's ridiculous. Yeah. You're seeing Phil Foden go and win a Premier League title and look like he's working towards becoming one of the best English players that's ever been. And of course, you've got Mason Greenwood, who people are calling the best finisher at Manchester United. When you've got more senior players there ahead of him. So it is a mentality thing where, some of these players might be looking at it and going, actually, I want to be the best. I want to be in there with the Ronaldos, the Messis and things like that. But sometimes it's just a case of you've got to look at it and go, you know what, he's just gifted. He's just gifted, and this is what it is. I think it's a mix of the three. I don't think you can put it down to one single thing, but I think it's very, very positive for the way the game's going that these players are coming out and sort of changing how we perceive football. And I think, before you'd look at maybe a centre-back and say, where, it's going to hurt, he's putting his body on the line for the club. Whereas now we're shifting towards, if you see a centre back that's playing out from the back and you can dribble past 3-4 players and play through the ball, and you're going, he's the next big thing. So it shows how the game's changing. It's showing how the game's adapting to the positive mindset of football. But definitely, I think it's really exciting, and I'm excited to see how these players turn out to be, because right now we're looking at Ronaldo and Messi. In 10, 15 years, it might be 4 or 5 players that we're looking at.
Yeah, so just on that note, I mean, which is the player that excites you the most right now? He's probably a player which is probably not played first team football as much as yet, but who is the player that you're really looking forward to coming onto the scene?
Definitely one has to be Mukoko. From a huge talent. The numbers he was putting at under 15s, under 16s was ridiculous. And he's playing there under that age as well. From a United perspective, I think he's been waiting for his time. And he could really come into his own if he has a few more chances. I think obviously Dylan Levitt's one where he's gone to the Euros and he's yet to play a full season for Manchester United. That should tell you what the Wales team think of him. And of course, Shola Shoretire, he's one that I haven't seen a lot of, but I think he's a great talent. There's obviously Joe Hugill and Charlie McNeil. Those are all players that I'm really excited to see. But I'm still on the board of Mason Greenwood. Has a lot more to show, and I think once he gets that number 9 spot and he probably bulks up a little bit, because I think physically he can do a little bit more. But I think he's going to turn into an alien of a footballer, and I think there's a lot more to see from him.
Yeah, I mean, hoping to Greenwood becoming the next star for United. Moving on, Karthik. Over the last year or so, we've seen probably the largest protests at Manchester United in our history. Probably, the protests had such a big impact that we got arguably the largest game of the calendar year for the Premier League cancelled. That is United versus Liverpool, and that means that we did have an impact. The protests did have an impact. Now, for us, for people, for channels like ours, we are from India, and we aren't able to go to the stadium. We aren't able to come to Old Trafford and join in the protests. We actually spoke to a couple of other people about this also. How do you think that channels from India and fan clubs from India can sort of be a part of this protest and help in the movement?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I know what that's like. Obviously, I've been in India for a majority of my life, and I know what it's like to be a fan from that side of it, and I know what it's like to be on this side of it in Old Trafford. Now, from my perspective, I think the best way that fans abroad can Sorry, I think my internet dropped. Am I back?
Yeah, back.
Yeah, I'll start answering the question from the beginning. Right, okay. Yeah, so I've been on both sides of it. I think I've been on the side of supporting the football club from India, from across the other side of the world. I've been on the side of being in the stadium, and I was at the protests. So there's two sides to it, and obviously there's merits on both sides. Obviously, I'm not going to get into the argument of who's a bigger fan, this and that. I think that's a lot of rubbish. Fans abroad, I think the way that they can get involved is by simply talking about it, signing petitions, like we've seen, obviously the one for independent regulation. I think that one is the most important one. Things like that, when you're signing it from abroad, just put the postcode for Old Trafford down. It still goes through, and there's not anyone really to say, well, you're not even from the UK, how are you going to know? That's the best way to do it. Put a thing through, or just share it and sort of build awareness of what's happening. And I think channels like this, channels like All for United, channels like, even the small channels, like whatever audience you can reach and talk about why the Glazers are so detrimental to Manchester United, I think it's so important, because a lot of people misunderstand what we mean when we say the Glazers are bad for the club, because they look at the amount we've spent on transfers and go, well, you spend this much, and this much. But it's up to people like us to sort of explain why and what we actually mean. And I think the more people who do that, the more eyes turn on the Glazers, and then something can happen.
Yeah, fair enough. Karthik, getting into our first team, the United first team, there's a certain position that's been debated a lot this season. That's our goalkeeper. We've obviously had David De Gea as our number one keeper. He's bailed us out in numerous situations throughout the years. But of late, I think from February onwards, we saw Oli giving Dean Henderson the first team role in the Premier League, while De Gea was sort of reserved to the Europa League games and the Cup games. I firstly want to ask you, do you agree with what he's done? And also, is it time for De Gea to move on? And is Dean Henderson ready to take up the number one position?
First of all, I'd like to say David De Gea has been a superb goalkeeper for about 3 or 4 years. He was our player of the year every year, and that should tell you what it's like. At a club like Manchester United, when your goalkeeper's player of the year, it says something either about the team's performance or the goalkeeper's performance. I think it's a bit of both. He was quite easily the best goalkeeper in the world, and I was proud to be able to say that because it's been a long time since United have had someone who was best in the world in their position, and David De Gea was that. However, in the past 3 years, a couple of years, it's very clear that he's hit a decline. Now, whether that's because of the change of goalkeeping coach, whether that's because of a confidence thing, I don't know. However, Dean Henderson has shown that he deserves his place. Now, ever since he went on loan to Sheffield United, every time he went on loan, he said, I'm going to come back and fight for United's number one spot. First of all, that's a big mentality to have because at a club like United, there's no guarantee that you will get there. We've had Ben Foster, we've had Sam Johnstone, we've had Tom Heaton. All of them go off and have very good careers, but they all wanted to be United's number one. They didn't make it. Dean Henderson had that thought in his head that he is going to come back and fight for that spot, which is what he's doing. So, number one, he deserved the chance. So good on Oli for giving it to him. Number two, when we started the season and De Gea was our number one, I had it in my head that Dean Henderson, come the end of the season, will be playing in the more important games. Now, bar the Europa League final, that was true. Dean Henderson ended up playing most of the Premier League games, and De Gea ended up as our Europa League goalkeeper. So, firmly, that is De Gea number two, Dean Henderson number one. Yeah. Whether Henderson's ready to be number one, I don't know. Quite frankly, I think he's ready for the chance, but he also has his faults. Now, his positioning can sometimes be off. His shot stopping obviously isn't as good as David De Gea's, but De Gea has his faults in terms of his crosses. He can't deal with the crosses very well. His near post, he's been caught up many times. And I think I watched a video, I can't remember who did, I think it might have been Tifo, about his goalkeeping stance. That's actually probably not setting him up for the best possible save. So there's lots of stuff to discuss, but the main thing that Manchester United Football Club have to look at is David De Gea is in about 300k a week, 250, 300k a week. Yeah. Dean Henderson has just signed a new 5-year deal on, I think he's on 100k or something like that. Now, De Gea has a few years left on his contract. Henderson's got about 4. You've got to look at it as, if we sell De Gea, who's going to pick up his wages? Now, there are probably a handful of clubs who can do that. If we're going to sell Dean Henderson, a lot of clubs can take his wages, but now you're gambling on De Gea having to pick up his form. Yeah. So there's a choice there to be made of whether it's a financial decision that you make and keep De Gea because he's the more valuable asset and harder to get rid of, or you get rid of De Gea and try and pay some of the wages when you're going. That's the decision United have to make. But I think the decision's already been made. I think Henderson's going to be United's number one. And whether De Gea stays for another year, I don't know. I think it would be wise to sell him because his value is only going to go lower. But it'll be interesting to see because I think that is a decision that has to be made this summer.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Moving on, Karthik. We've had I would say, 6.5 or 7 on 10 season, in my opinion. We did finish second in the league, but we didn't do well in the other competitions. The Europa League final was a real disaster, according to me. So it's been, I think the times when we should have performed well, we didn't. And the times we didn't expect the team to do so well, I think they surprised us. So it's been a topsy-turvy. We've seen that without Maguire, we are very poor, very penetrated at the back. In the midfield, we have McTominay and Fred playing together as 2 holding midfielders, and we don't have the creativity going forward. Now, obviously, Jadon Sancho seems to be done. So, barring that, which are the 3 positions that you would like to strengthen, and who are the players in that?
Other 3, so assuming Sancho's done, because I think we do need more than 3, and I think that is what Oli wants, whether he'll get that is another thing. You're right in terms of Maguire, so a centre-back is on the card, but I think the number one priority has to be One, the right winger, which we've signed. I think that's pretty much done. We might see something in the next couple of days. And number 6 is my main aim for that. At the time of recording, we're not linked with anyone in particular. We seem to be. There's a story going around that United have to sell in order to buy one. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'll be discussing that later. At the time of recording, I'm doing a show tonight, and we're going to be discussing that. But I think at number 6 is most important. Now, Declan Rice could be that guy, but if West Ham are expecting a fee of 100 million, I think we've got to look elsewhere. If it was up to me, we'd be chucking everything at Wilfred Ndidi and getting him done. However, that's unlikely. So I think we've got to look at a different kind of number 6 now. Considering the situation with Lukaku and Inter Milan not fully paying us off yet, I think there could be an opportunity we go there and ask for Brozovic. But whether he's up to the standard, I'm not sure. And I think it also depends on what kind of number 6 Ole wants. Now, a lot of people seem to think that he doesn't want to play a 4-3-3. Now, I personally think if he had a proper central defensive midfielder, he plays a number 6 and 2 free agents, Pogba and Bruno. However, you can also do the same thing in a 4-2-3-1, because if you look at how Gareth Southgate's played his 4-2-3-1 with Calvin Phillips as part of the double pivot, but he tends to wander up forward. I think that could be what United try and do this season, which is why maybe he's tried to play McTominay and Fred, but McTominay is the one that goes forward, but Fred's not too good at the back. So I think he's looking for that solid player defensively. Now, that gives you a few options. You could go for a Ruben Neves, where he's not as physical, but he plays the game up here where he can nip in for an interception. He makes those spatial awareness decisions very well. You could go for a Sal Niguez, where he's a deep line playmaker, where he's not as good defensively, but he can do a job because he does that in Atletico Madrid's system, and that's the one I'd personally go for. Or you could go for a Locatelli. That's the one I want, and I think we should be in for him. A fee for about 40 million. You've seen in the Euros, he's played a bit more of an advanced role, but for his club, he's usually played further back, and I think that's the best position for him, and I'd love us to go and get him, but I don't think we will. Who we do end up with is anyone's guess, because we've not really been linked with anyone. I mean, today we saw a story about Camavinga. Yes, he could play double pivot, but he's not exactly a defensive player. It's going to be interesting to see who we get, but definitely number 6 is my number 1 priority. Second priority has got to be a centre-back. I think everyone's in agreement with that. Now, people have argued, yes, Victor Lindelof's superb. You can have him. Eric Bailly, when he's fit, he can do well. But my question to you is this. When we've got 2 of those are playing at any one time at the minute, Maguire and Lindelof are first choice. Outside of that, you've got Eric Bailly, who can't stay fit. You've got Axel Tuanzebe, who I absolutely rate and I absolutely love, but he's never played a full season uninjured for United. And then who do you have? You've got no one. You've got Phil Jones. Phil Jones is less said the better. He's going to get sold. You've got Ted Mengi, who's probably not ready yet, and he's going to go out on loan again. So you've got to go and get a centre-back. And for me, that's got to be someone of experience, someone ready to go and partner Harry Maguire. And for me, that's Raphael Varane. He's absolutely perfect. Now, Varane's the obvious one, the one that seems to be likely for us to go and get. But if I was being a little bit going with my heart a little bit more, it'd be Sergio Ramos. Get him on a free, get him for 2 years, you get a shithouse, you get a bit of leadership, and that's all you want in a centre-back. But I think the more sensible option financially and in terms of his age is Raphael Varane. So I'd go for him. And the third position, that's a tough one. You could go and get a striker. I think that could be useful because I think Martial might be on their way out. My heart would say go and beat Manchester City to go and sign Jack Grealish, but that's not going to happen. You could even throw the idea of Harry Kane, but that's not going to happen either. So I think a backup striker could be useful, but then you want to play Mason Greenwood, then that's why we're getting Jadon Sancho. So maybe not. Maybe we get a full back, and we're being linked to Kieran Trippier. Honestly, I wouldn't mind that. A bit of competition for Wan-Bissaka. Someone with a bit more attacking talent than Wan-Bissaka, and maybe push him a little bit more. So I'd say yeah, but then one might argue Diogo Dalot's back and maybe he could push him. So it's going to be interesting. That third signing's the iffy one. I'm not too sure about. I wouldn't mind an extra fullback. I wouldn't mind a goalkeeper if we're selling one. But then again, we've just signed Tom Heaton. But for me, that third position would be a right back or a backup striker.
So do you see this team that you've named, that with all your first team signings that you get, do you think this team is going to challenge for the title, considering City go out and they get their Kanes and Grealishes, and obviously even Chelsea are going to they all strengthen. Do you think we'll be in the race? We'll be confident with this team.
Uh, I'd be confident at closing the gap. I don't think I'd be confident that we go and challenge, simply because if Manchester City go and spend 200 million plus on Jack Grealish and Harry Kane, they are winning the league by 20 points. Simple as that. Because Jack Grealish is a top 5 Premier League player in his position. I don't care what anyone says. And Harry Kane's the best striker in the world next to Robin Lewandowski. So they are going to win the league by about 20 points if they sign those two. However, if we go and sign Jadon Sancho, Varane or Ramos, we go and get a central defensive midfielder, we go and get someone like a Sal, we go and get Neves, we go and get a fullback. We can bridge the gap. But common sense would say City have increased that gap by more than we've closed it, and then we're just back where we started. So it's going to be difficult. But the only hope I'd say is you sit on this, you let City have Kane, you let them have Grealish, sit out this year, try and maintain your position, try and stay second, try and win a trophy in that season. And then next season, you jump in the bidding war for Erling Haaland, and then you see what happens. Because if we get Haaland, something interesting might happen after that, but we'll see.
Yeah. I was going through your Instagram page and I happened to see a photo you posted with Donny van de Beek. He has had he's not been played enough. People have wanted him to play, and when he's played, people have wanted him to not play. It's just very debatable. What is your opinion on Donny van de Beek? Do you think he has a future at United?
It's a weird one because when we signed Donny van de Beek, I was under the impression that he was a replacement for Paul Pogba, but now it looks increasingly like Pogba's going to stay. So I'm kind of thinking, where does he fit in? Because if we were going to play a 6-2-8, I think Van de Beek fits in that system and you can rotate him in and out. But if we're playing this double pivot where you want, it's not going to happen. I don't think that's his position. I think in that system, you've got to play him as a 10. It's going to be interesting because I don't know whether they're reliable, but I've seen stories of people being linked with him. I don't think we're going to sell him because that's not what United do. We don't sign someone and then sell them the next season unless there's someone stupid like Di Maria or Memphis Depay. I think he could be playing a part. I think he could play a bigger part. But I also think that when he's played, he's not been, wow, he must start or wow, he must play more. He's been, okay, but he needs a bit more. I'd like to see what he does in pre-season because I think he'll get a few more games in pre-season and maybe he'll gel a little bit more. Maybe he's going to play better next to an actual holding midfielder. Maybe he needs a more defensive player next to him so he can operate in the spaces a bit more. It's going to be interesting, but it is a weird one. It is one of the signings. Now, Ollie has a good record with signings, but this one's a bit weird. I don't know what he's going to do with Van de Beek. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that you mentioned Ollie. So you're going to get this question everywhere. Are you Ollie in or Ollie out? Do you think that he can take us to the next level where we're looking to get to?
That is a question that I had to seriously ask myself after the Europa League final. I don't think I'm Ollie in or I'm Ollie out. I don't believe in that thing. I believe in wanting what's best for the club. And when Ollie came in first, I said, if he can take us to the end of the season, then great, superb, we'll go get someone else. But then he did such a great job. I thought, you know what, actually, I want to see what he can do. And then that first season, I thought, he's not got the squad. Last season, we didn't have the squad.
Yeah.
And then this season, we had a disappointing transfer window, but he got an Edinson Cavani that's done all right. And he's got an Alex Telles who's made Luke Shaw the best left back in the world. And we've looked okay and we had a good spell. And he's just finished his whole season unbeaten away from home. Now, in most of those games, we were behind. And we probably didn't deserve to win the games in the end, but the quality saw us through. When I think about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Manchester United, I think it's a much more likeable squad. I think his cultural reboot has been successful, and that's showing in the signings that we're making. I think the style of play is better, but it could do with some work.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of results on the pitch, we've got some of our best results under Ole. I think we've seen some of our best performances under Ole since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. But we've not seen the trophies. Now, that's the only thing that is sitting on my mind, because that Europa League final was the opportunity for me to go and say, you've done it, now no one can say anything. Now you've got that extra season. However, right now, he's going to start the season in a lot more pressure because he's just lost the Europa League final. He's still getting backed, and he's still rumoured to be given a long contract. So now he's got to go and show he deserves it. If he goes and gets his Jadon Sancho, if he goes and gets his centre-back, he's been chasing for 2 years now, Jadon Sancho. He wants a centre-back. If he goes and gets that, if he goes and gets another signing, then you've got to look at it and say, you've got no excuse to not challenge. Maybe not challenge for the league, because if, obviously, as I said, if City go and get Kane and Grealish, they're winning the league by 20 points. If Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doesn't get a trophy by the end of this season, I will have to say you have to look elsewhere, because he's had enough time. He's rebuilt the squad. He's left it with it in a much better place.
Yeah.
But if you can't win a trophy this season, I think you've got to just say thank you for what you've done. Thank you for getting us back to where, as a club, we should be, but not maybe as a team. Then we've got to look elsewhere. But for now, I'm firmly behind Ole, and I hope he can win a trophy.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Lastly, I want to ask you another, getting back to your coaching experiences. What is the dream as an aspiring football manager or football coach? What is your dream? Where do you want to see yourself maybe in the next 10, 15, 20 years?
I don't know how long it will take, but essentially the dream is to go and manage a professional football team. That could be anywhere. It could be League Two, League One, Championship, Premier League. I don't care. I want to be in the game. I want to have a name for myself in the league. Obviously, the big dream would be to go and manage in the Premier League, but that's a lot of work to do. But I am determined. I have a strong belief that I will end up there somehow. I don't know what the path will be. I don't know how long it'll take, but I know that I will end up there. And I want to be obviously the first. I don't think there has been one before, but the first Indian origin manager in the Premier League. That's the aim. Eventually, I might come back to India and try to build something there as well. But I want to finish. I've got business to attend to here. Let's put it that way, and make a name for myself here, and that's the dream.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Karthik. I think I really can't wait for you to get there one day, and I can tell my friends that I've had a conversation with Karthik Shayamasundar. Thanks a lot, Karthik, for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's such an enriching experience, because I've never really, like I said, I've never spoken to a footballing coach before, and it's just fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, absolute pleasure, and I'm always willing to help out any small channels, especially from India, because I was of that position where I was an Indian. I wanted to be part of these YouTube channels, and I never got the chance. So whenever someone contacts me, I'm always happy to. So absolute pleasure to be on.
Fantastic. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Do like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.